If you think you know what PR is supposed to do and you're in an industrial company and you think it's something that's appropriate for B2C or big companies or companies that already have fabulous marketing, I'd suggest you really need to rethink that. And this conversation, I think, is going to put you back on your heels a little bit as we hear from Greg Matusky about AI, how it's fundamentally changing the way we share information, and how it's fundamentally transforming the importance of public relations and PR into something that every company needs to be thinking about.
All those things are PR. The ability to create awareness, visibility, and viability for a player, I think relates to those people who can build awareness and build a reputation in many forms on many channels.
It's really banal to comment on the disruption of AI. It's fundamentally changing so many business practices. I mean, obviously, there's questions and concerns that we have to work through. We're going to make mistakes. There's no denying the change, however. And industrial marketing is just one area. Not only is AI changing how marketing is done, but it's fundamentally changing what needs to be done. Today's guest, Greg Matusky, is here to help us tackle both of those. We're going to look at both angles of this. And I'm sure it's going to be entertaining because Greg's a storyteller. He's been studying human communications and crafting stories for 40 years, from his early days as a magazine writer up through his current role as CEO of Gregory FCA, which is one of the 40 largest PR firms in America. He gets pretty cerebral about communications and about words and the art of language. And he's not afraid to delve into rabbit holes of linguistics and cognition to really try to uncover the process of human communications. And he likes sharing his discoveries. He's got some great insights. Lately, he's been sharing a lot, focusing a lot, and digging a lot into AI and how it's transforming corporate communications and public relations. In fact, interestingly, his team developed one of the first generative AI tools for PR professionals called GladWrite. And they did so, I mean, it's worth noting, even before OpenAI's introduction of ChatGPT in 2022. And then a couple of years ago, they also launched a tool they call Write Release, which is a free AI press release creation tool customized to produce more than 70 news release types. And Greg is also a podcaster, so I know that the conversation is going to be flowing today. He and I actually switching places behind microphone. I recently joined him for an episode of his podcast, The Disruption Is Now, which talks about AI and industrial sales. So I'm guessing that some of what you're going to hear from him today may be startling, and I anticipate lots of shareable moments. So please do share those with your colleagues, clip them on YouTube or however you listen or watch. And make sure that your colleagues who you realize after listening have some misconceptions about the discipline of public relations hear from Greg's perspective. So join me in welcoming Greg Matusky to the Industrial Growth Institute podcast. Hey, Greg.
How are you, Ed?
I'm well, thank you. I'm hot. Honestly, I'm hot. We got about 100 degrees here north of Boston today.
Hot summer. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. All right, so I'm not going to ask you to list all 70 news release types. But I had no idea there was that many. Give me a couple examples of the releases that industrial manufacturers should be using consistently, in your opinion.
Well, certainly, as we talk about news releases, the launch of a new product, a new project, that's important. I think it's important to announce key acquisitions, key strategic relationships. I think it's important to let the world know if you're adding to your C-suite or if you're adding to your engineering chops. I think it's important if you're opening new locations. I think it's important if you face some challenge that's out there or some reputational issue. You'll want to be out speaking about it in a thoughtful way. So it's funny, the meaning of press releases, Ed, have ebbed and flowed over time.
Right.
There was a time where I was saying the press release is dead, and now there's a time where it's more important than others, it's more important than ever. I even find, for instance, PR Newswire and Business Wire to be sources on AI searches, which just astounds me because that's from the corporation itself. But it does appear, and some of that makes its way into the response to prompts that people make when they're using AI. So it's the full gamut. And if you ask me today, should we do more or less? It depends on your business, certainly, but I would tend to err on the side of more information that's out there about you will help in a zero-click world, I believe.
And I love your mention in zero click. We're going to dive into that. I also love the fact that you're acknowledging that you changed your mind. I always worry when somebody is so dogmatic that, I see that a lot. We're going to talk more about content and SEO. So many of the SEO people just insist against all the evidence that continues to be the way to go. So I love that intellectual agility that you have. But let's
Well, and
back up.
it was forced upon me when I was uh, 4 years ago when I first heard that AI was going to be able to write. I at first my reaction was, "Hey, I'm an artist. I've spent 35, 40 years learning this craft. I believe it's something about programming your neural network, just like a violinist or an NFL quarterback, to understand the subject matter and how it works." And then we built our own. And then when I saw ChatGPT, I've said this many times, it was just a joyful day in my life because I suddenly realized that some of the very hard work of the hard lifting of writing, which has to do with the data, Ed, which has to do with the Oxford commas and the verb use and all that goes along with the rules, can now be overcome. And you can concentrate on the intelligence, which really is the messaging.
I love that.
And so for me, I thought it was a great way to help other people become better communicators. And it's proven to be. And much of what I wrote in the beginning of this journey, people laughed at and they poo-pooed because they did not believe that it could ever construct thought, but it can. And I will say I was right all along, and I think it just will continue to be disruptive and transformational.
All right, so let's back up. I'm pretty sure that my perceptions of PR are limited and probably wrong, certainly incomplete. Tell us from an expert, what does PR do?
Well, it's going to be doing a lot more in the near future, Ed, and AI will be part of that. It's about telling your story clearly. And there was a time, Ed, where there was a handful of major media that we targeted as PR people. And there wasn't this big, diverse world of people producing podcasts. In industrial marketing, there could be literally five contacts that you need to be in front of that no one's ever heard of. So, PR is getting you to the right people, getting your information there in a positive way that that somehow improves your reputation and awareness.
Right.
And we do a lot of that through media relations. We do a lot of that through content development. We do a lot of that through studies, surveys. We do a lot of that through events and becoming known speakers or subject matter experts in that field. So it's really not that far away from what an industrial biz dev person would do or CEO to inform the market. It's just amplifying it in some
Right.
way.
What size company is PR right for? Should a $10 million company be looking at it, or do they have to be 100 million, or what?
Well, I think a couple things. For instance, if it depends on what your industry is, but it should never be looked at as the single arrow in the quiver of marketing. And if you're at the point where you're doing good marketing, meaning you have good specs that can be shared, good case studies that can be shared, or you could develop them, you're at the point where you've done the basics. What are the basics? Product spec sheets, case studies, brochures, still to this day. You have a LinkedIn presence. I think then you should really start looking at PR. If you're starting, if you have to answer, if a PR firm has to answer to the CEO, it's never a good thing because not a lot gets done, right? You need to have a professional marketing team that they join and become extensions of that team.
But isn't PR really sometimes very strategic? I mean, shouldn't the CEO own some of that relationship?
They should own some of it, but they shouldn't be the individual that has to approve things and
Got it.
move them through the channels. If the CEO is the one that has to call the client for a case study, it'll never get done.
Right.
That's just not high priority. If there's a CMO, if there's a marketing director who can move projects along, set up interviews, maintain schedules, have the editorial schedule before them, That's the kind of thing you need to really activate a PR firm. If the CEO needs to move it, it's never really, it never works. It
Right.
just doesn't work.
Makes sense. On the other hand, it also feels to me like if the CEO just abdicates any sort of fingerprint on it and leaves it to a 25-year-old marketing person who doesn't have business acumen, doesn't understand the strategy, doesn't understand the investor's motives, doesn't understand how the buying decisions are made. I mean, that person can handle the mechanics of uploading a press release to Newswire, but they can't formulate the essence of the PR strategy.
And really, there's two things going on there. From the C-suite, you have to know what the message is. You have to know what the market is. You have to understand how you communicate with this market, right? The PR firm can help form that. You'd be amazed at how many times we're called into the C-suite to actually formulate that. Is it the people in charge? You're so busy with
Right.
day to day. You know, they have a board meeting coming up. They have to meet with investors. They've got a problem somewhere in the chain, in the
Supply chain.
supply chain, that formulating those strategies can often be the last thing. Even very sophisticated companies.
Right.
I've had the great pleasure of working with many very intelligent people who value my ability to distill it and present it
Right.
in a way that's compelling to any kind of audience. So that's one thing. The second thing is that the strategy needs to be a relationship between the internal people and the external people, and that can come from different sources. So first of all, you have all the messaging and positioning, then you have the strategy. Where are we taking the story out to? What's the pain point of our customers? How do we speak to those pain points? How do we tell the story in a compelling way? Where must we appear? That's the strategy. And then the deliverables, of course, are the news releases or the talking points or the interviews, setting up the interviews and things like that.
In February of this year, I want to point out, you're not the only voice saying that AI potentially not only disrupts marketing and disrupts PR, but makes PR more important. Because in February this year, Rand Fishkin of SparkToro used to be, I'm vaporlocking the name. Anyway, he's kind of Mr. SEO.
Right.
Mr.
I
Content
follow
Marketing.
him. Yeah, I follow him.
So he made some waves when he predicted that PR is the future of marketing. I'll drop a link to his post in the show notes, but he said there's three key reasons. He acknowledged that traditional media is decaying. Alternative media and influencers are often best reached through strategic PR. He said that outlets like Reddit and Hacker News and similar feeds are largely influenced by PR. And he said that PR influence content is particularly important in establishing a strong position in LLMs. You talked about how when you are using LLMs, you're finding sourced information from PR Newswire, for instance. Is there anything he's missing or anything that you want to build on there?
Well, let's talk about that, because today, Muckrack, which is a big technology provider to PR firms, released a new feature which will allow you to put in customized prompts up to 100 of what you think your customer, your prospect may be entering into AI engines. It's 3 right now. It's Claude, it's Gemini, and it's Chat. And then it allows you to see where it's extracting that information from. Okay. So you could set up a number of prompts and then look and find out where it's coming from. And it's interesting. It's showing that much of that is coming from the media. I think it's like, I got a number here, 87% comes from earned exposure. That might be through the media or unowned blogs and websites. So,
and is that because the LLMs see that as such a high trust factor, or why is that?
Because it's authoritative, and the right media is authoritative. And how do they judge that? Well, if it's written in certain contexts, that drives it. And there's some media that is just more authoritative than others, right? If you're in the New York Times, which does not appear a lot because it hasn't done deals, it's in litigation and OpenAI, that article has been vetted by a human being, right? And so it ranks it. And on the LLM side, it does a couple things, right? First of all, it looks for if there's quotes in the article. Why is that? Because too many of us create content on blogs and owned properties that are easy to write, that we don't go out and actually get third-party opinions for it, right? When I was a writer for Success Magazine, my editor would require me to have 10 interviews. And after 5, I'd always say, I'm hearing the same thing. And he would say, good, that means you're vetting it, right? That means that it's true. And only 5 would appear in the article. And I always thought, what a waste. But he knew better than I at that point, me as a 26-year-old kid telling him how to edit his magazine. But nevertheless, that's one point. Then it's going to, on our own content, it's going to vastly change how we write that content. Some of it to the bad. I mean, I like to be a little bit more poetic in how I write. I wrote a section recently on sustainability and energy services that we provide here for PR services in those sectors. And I started this section of the website with energy is life, and where there's life, there's opportunity, right? No one goes to an LLM and says, I'm looking for a PR agency that believes that energy is life.
Sure, right.
So you've got to reconstruct it. You have to say, Gregory FCA serves some of the biggest energy management companies in the world with PR services that include XYZ. So it's going to be less elegant, but it has to answer those prompts that are most likely to be asked.
But can it do both? Can't you have a section of the article that provides that kind of grid of context, but still provide the character and the culture of your company through the artistic part as well?
I think there's going to be a lot less room for it, Ed.
Really?
I think you're going to have to provide fact, case studies, real conclusions. I think it'd be very dangerous to start a section like I just described without explaining right up front. And I hate the verb, but is going to be back in vogue where it's going to say Gregory FCA is, and it gives it right up front. So, and I just did this test. I ran new web copy through a AI engine,
right?
And it showed me where it could be rewritten, and that specifically came up. So my tendency to be poetic, or tendency to try to build interest in traditional journalistic fashion, which is to have a lead and then a transition and then the payoff,
right?
It doesn't work in an AI engine.
So you're going to have to flex that muscle in social media going forward, or I mean, it feels like that hook still matters in many places.
I think you're going to have to write. You're going to have to write headlines that still are clickable, right? But answer some question in some way.
Got it.
Right. So, if I'm doing it today, it's going to be, why doesn't anyone find me on AI search? Okay. Now, if I saw that as a business person, I would click on it. I find it interesting. But also the chances of that being a prompt, I think are pretty high right now.
Right. Makes sense.
So, I think we're going to have to rethink a lot of what we do with social media. I think hype is going to be downplayed, right? And I think real facts, real studies, real conclusions. I think industrial companies can really benefit from this. And because they have real thought subject matter experts in areas that customers want to find out. That customer may ask about a specific design idea or a specific industrial product or a specific vendor, which I think many industrial companies have those answers better than maybe software providers. So I think there's some real advantages to go deeper and provide more real world information for industrial marketers that would be to their advantage.
So clearly that's a change. I know you started your career in content creation. You started as a writer. You started crafting stories. And for many years, your firm has helped companies with content creation, kind of in that traditional digital marketing vein. We look at what's happened with HubSpot's traffic and keyword rankings over the last 18 months. They've crashed because of all of these related factors of AI. So you're talking about changing the way we write a little bit. What other changes are you advising clients to make to adapt to this new world of AI in terms of their content marketing?
Well, it's really important to understand where the engines are pulling from. And it's shocking when you look at, for instance, the Muckrack study that came out that accompanied their launch. And they identified sources that really surprised me. One was Reddit, which ranks very high, which is troubling to me because that's unvetted information, right? Another is Cura, which again should trouble us because that's unvetted, right? Wikipedia. I think industrial companies really need to look at Wikipedia, something they've probably overlooked.
Right.
And what is the grounds for being accepted on Wikipedia? Is you need to be an influencer yourself. For myself, I need to be published in authoritative media to win entry into Wikipedia.
Right.
So it's kind of like a catch-22 when you look at that. LinkedIn articles are part of the AI search process. So as opposed to LinkedIn posts, the articles you write, which I never get nearly the response from the LinkedIn articles I write as I do from quick, thoughtful little updates and posts. But the articles are included, the posts are
articles sit
not.
outside the paywall, right?
Right.
Or the registration wall.
You're looking at Substack, you're looking at Medium, Instagram. I mean, those YouTube with transcripts are important, which an industrial company should really think about with their subject matter experts talking on an esoteric topic with the transcript available.
Let's talk YouTube, because you embraced video early. I mean, you've got over 300 videos over 6 years. You've got folks on your staff who understand the medium very well. I mean, Tara, who's been a TV news anchor and a producer for Good Morning America and CBS Interactive. So there's serious talent, serious commitment on your part. Why do you think that video is so important?
Well, it's the way we like to, some people like to ingest information, right? For some purposes. And they find in studies, Ed, that it's different for different purposes. I find this to be in my case, right? If I'm doing a home repair, I cannot follow written instructions. If I watch a video, I find it highly informative and very, very useful, right? Think about that in the industrial vein. There's some people that learn through the manuals and the written word. There's some people that learn through hands-on experience. Some people that really value videos. Okay, so that's a real opportunity. And as far as SEO and GEO, it's very valuable also. It's also a very good relationship builder. My blog has my podcast, it's helped me connect with people all throughout the world.
They see your face, they hear your voice, and they get to know you as a person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that relationship then extends, and it extends, for instance, Ed, if I was to go to a trade show and I ran into you, we would have a drink all of a sudden because we know each other.
Right.
And that's the first step of awareness. We know each other.
And so do you ever suggest to customers that they, for instance, invite their prospects on for video discussions or LinkedIn Live or webinars or podcasts as a way to build those relationships?
I do that all day long, Ed. I do that all day long. When I see a prospect who can speak thoughtfully on what I like to do is cover AI,
Right.
and many of my clients are AI enabled in some way, I will have them on, and that's often the first step. And it's a very important step because they get to see that I walk the talk.
Right.
I understand AI. I can talk about, the black box within the AI and how the inconsistencies create complications in enterprise deployments. And all of a sudden, I'm talking their talk, and they understand then that that's been socialized throughout the firm and that we're a right fit for them. So to put that on the level of industrial marketing, if you have prospects on, if you have customers on, that builds the relationship with the customer, but it's also from your biz dev point of view, it gives you a whole new way to prospect.
Right.
My biz dev team will prospect by going out looking for podcast guests. They agree to be on it. They follow up. They build relationships. We meet again at a trade show or
Right.
a conference. We have a dinner. They're included. And we're one step closer to building a relationship that really matters.
I love that. Now, you've taken it further with video. Not only do you walk the talk, and you've got this channel with a number of videos and different podcasts and different playlists and all of that, but you also have productized it for your clients, your Here Plus Now model. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's funny. That was done during the pandemic before Look, when the pandemic hit, my first concern, I'm so old, in 2000, I remember I had a client that was streaming video and all the technical challenges that went on there, and receiving video and decompressing video and understanding what packets did. And my first concern was, I hope Cisco and everyone else can really deliver, because we're going to be a remote workforce and it's going to be all up to Zoom or Google Meetings. And I hope the internet can handle this video. And I'll be damned if it didn't. But when it happened, we weren't as schooled. And what Here and Now was to provide those remote kind of video opportunities for our clients. Now that's evolved, right? And right now, most clients can handle this end of it, doing the interview via video. It's progressed quickly.
But the mindset of that, though, finding an important, timely topic and getting a company leader or SME out there to comment on it, that just feels like basic best practice.
It's basic best practice. I mean, we're doing that right now. I talked about Muckrack releases. We're doing a podcast with Muckrack to talk about it to the world, to our clients. So all that is important as news breaks, that you have, that you work in every channel that's possible. That can be the print channel, that can be the social channel, that can be the self-publishing channel, that can be the website, and that can be video. And we just have always thought that it was an important mix within the communications matrix, and we work it hard. We released another product recently in the same vein called Crisis Calm, and it's a platform that any company can use to preload scenarios, preload risks, preload anything from spokesperson training to information about the company, inform the machine. And then when a scenario hits, it walks them through what is the crisis, who are the stakeholders, what is their pain point and concern, what are the messaging points, here's a sample holding statement for the media, here's a town hall script, here's a letter to the board of directors, here's a letter to the regulators that it's a first step, it's a draft. The human has to be there. This will never, and something like that will never replace human input. But in my experience, you often get hit with a crisis Friday at 3:30 in August, when everyone's at the beach or on vacation, and the C-suite calls, the CEO calls and says, "What's our plan for handling the Jumbotron Coldplay crisis?" And no one's around. Right. Well, this gives you the ability to really prepare for it and execute it quickly, at least the first go round. That will reduce response times. The typical crisis hits the media in 30 minutes, and it takes a corporation something like 28 hours to respond. So we got to get that response rate down. AI can help, and actually training in advance an AI model to do it is probably the smartest strategy any company can do.
Interesting. One of the value propositions of your firm is that you hire journalists, not just talented writers. Why is that important?
Well, journalists know stories, and they know how to tell stories. And that's a big part of it. They also know how newsrooms work. And a lot of them are expert in their particular area of expertise. Okay. And that's important, because when someone comes to us, for instance, in an industrial company, and they understand the complete supply chain, all of a sudden now they can talk on a more authoritative level, something that ChatGPT can't do. It'll just give you a generality. But even if you're using ChatGPT to understand the nuances of what tariffs really mean and how it's going to impact shipping volumes through the Suez Canal, right, it is something that can only be prompted by somebody who understands what they're looking at.
And is that because that makes their outreach to media more effective and intuitive because they've been on the other side? Is it because they understand how to position stories better? What really is behind it?
Both. First is that, how do media like to receive pitches, right? Do they like it to be short and sweet? They like it to be bulletized? How do we do that, right? So that's the format, because they've seen it 1,000 times.
Right.
And the other side is the nuance of the story. What isn't being covered in this, right? That's where we have to live.
Right.
Because what's being covered is not of interest to a journalist, but what's not being covered as something erupts or something happens is a real step forward. And in the newsroom, Reporters aren't going to their editors with things that have been reported. They're getting scored on how they're finding new things that have yet to be reported. So that's where we need to live. And that's where a journalist brings a natural understanding, because first, they understand the industry. So they're not, you're not talking about advances in solar energy as if it was 2000, right?
Right.
You're talking about the capacity it is today, the compression of the capital investment. So you understand that immediately, and that nuance can be created both in the if you're using AI in the prompt, but also by going through it and understanding what actually is news. Remember, the root basis of the word news is new.
Right. And we have to remember that the journalist is the customer in that case. We may be thinking down the line, our prospect, we want the prospect to hear our story, et cetera, and they're our customer. But as you're pitching the media, the journalist is the customer.
The journalist is the customer. It's the hardest thing for a client to understand. They often want it to be marketing speak, and
Right.
you really struggle with clients a lot of times to explain that you can't put that in a pitch because the media will immediately disqualify it.
Right.
And if you can even bring up a subtle negative, right? If you can say, this solution will not work for the following, the journalist appreciates that more than the hype that would say, this is one size fits all. The world should be beating a path to our door.
Right.
It's not going to work.
I've often suggested that industrial manufacturers, as they build their content team, think about hiring journalists, because they can interview, they can research, they can craft stories, as you said. What would it take? I mean, you understand journalists and PR firms. What would it take for a journalist to survive in the environment surrounded by a bunch of engineers?
I think this is interesting. I think, and we face that sometimes, right? You want to do an interview with a subject matter expert, and you have a major industry week that's interested in the contributed content,
Mm-hmm.
and you go to an engineer, and they want to be so dry and specific that a human written final product reads like AI,
Right.
and it'll be denied. So getting an engineer to understand that, talking from their real experience instead of just the facts, the product definitions, the specifications, is what's going to make this work. So to say something like, I just walked out of a planning meeting with one of our top tier customers. Their concern was something new to me. They had seen failure in XYZ, and they're looking for a way to reconstitute the entire manufacturing process to reduce blah, blah, blah. This is something that many face. Engineers don't want to do that. They want to say that the recent failure of XYZ is causing blah, 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 blah. But a machine can write that.
Right.
Right? A machine doesn't walk out of a meeting. A machine doesn't hear a client's point of pain. So getting them to understand that is very challenging. And then when they see the draft that includes that, the first thing they want to do is edit that out
Mm-hmm.
and not give their personal experience. It's not the way they're trained. Engineers are not about people. They're about things, okay? But the media still wants to hear from people and about people. So that's a lesson we try to drive home.
And so it feels like the young journalist who gets hired, who's working with the gray-haired engineers, is going to need social and consistent public support from a senior executive in order to elicit that kind of feedback and get those kinds of stories produced internally. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, more than ever, the CEO has to understand the value in getting information into the marketplace that can play a part in SEO and GEO.
Right.
And if they're not willing to do that, then you're facing this world where no one clicks anymore.
Right.
The number of searches that end in a click is down 60%,
Right.
Ed.
Yep.
And we all know why, right? Google is confounding. I think we'll look back and say, can you believe we put up with a time in our lives where we did a search and the first 4, 5, 6 hits had nothing to do with what you're looking for, but rather it has everything to do with generating revenue for
Right.
Google,
Right.
right? We're going to say, what? Or can you imagine when we look back and we say, I spent all my time trying to influence a single entity in the world
Yep.
called Google,
Yep.
not human beings, Google,
Yep.
right? So, it's a new world, and we all have to accept that, change with it, and really understand what's driving AI. And we have to try to reverse engineer that black box, which is not easy. That's why they call it a black box. I have sat down with PhD machine learning experts from MIT, from Columbia, from the University of Pennsylvania. They go on at great length about not really understanding that black box. I mean, Jeffrey Hinton, the father of AI, says there's a lot more going on there than predictive reasoning. There's a consciousness. That's where he lives, right? He really believes that ability to perceive the world and project it isn't predictive.
Yeah,
That's something.
I was at a Diwali party last fall and chatting with a PhD who's at MIT working on machine learning. And one of the things that startled me was he explained, we all talk about hallucinations. And I assumed that there was an understanding of why hallucinations happened. And the question was, what's the best way to solve it? He said, the brightest minds in working in AI and LLMs don't understand why the hallucinations happen. And that really, for me, was quite a significant moment to understand when you talk about the black box.
Yeah, there can be many reasons for why it happens. I mean, some of it can just be baked into the system, Ed, that they built these AI engines to please us,
Right.
right? And if they can pull one over on us, I hate to be so crass, but and we're happy, they feel. I shouldn't say feel. They have completed their assignment,
Right.
right? They have completed what they were created for. It could be something as basic as that,
Right.
right? Or it could be something as basic as, hey, you're supposed to be smart. If you don't have the information, act like you're smart, right? Or it could be that I'll give you a very real world example early in this process, before the engines had opportunity to go online, right? And I said, tell me about Silicon Valley Bank. It said, it gave me a college senior level dissertation. Silicon Valley Bank, Silicon Valley um, bank that finances VCs and has a unique model. And it didn't know about the collapse. This was right at the time. I said, tell me about the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Well, now it goes, oh, it collapsed. Let me go in and find out why banks collapse. Oh, Silicon Valley Bank is a Silicon Valley Bank that finances VC backed firms, and it recently collapsed due to its bad loans. Okay. It did that because Silicon Valley Bank, that was a unicorn event,
Right.
had nothing to do with bad loans.
Right.
They didn't hedge their bond holdings, and it failed. Okay. But it said it so assertively, Ed, and with the right grammar and the right thought process that, like, oh, that makes sense. No, that's how these hallucinations can be so nuanced that, yeah, I mean, in my business, we're not creating the next wonder drug, so we're not going to kill anybody by saying that.
You'll certainly kill a company's credibility, though, if you put something like that out there.
Exactly.
I read several AI newsletters every day. One has prompt tips every day, and there was a great one this morning that said what you need to do as part of a prompt or a follow-on question is make sure you don't guess about anything, and if there's any gaps where you're unsure, call those out so I understand those gaps.
It's a trick I use all the time. And
So,
I'll do something else, which is kind of interesting. I'll say, here's a problem, hallucinate and think outside the box and give me the craziest things you can think of. That's called creativity.
Right.
So, as one PhD once explained it to me, is that, hey, another word for hallucination could be creativity. And whereas, creativity is unvetted and unchecked. Who would have thought,
Right.
Gwyneth Paltrow would save an astronomer, right? Highly creative idea. AI could never come up with it, but it did what it was supposed to do. It immediately changed the conversation.
Right.
So, who knows?
You certainly have vastly more storyteller chops than I do. But I want to talk about a common mistake that I see many companies make in their content, and I assume in their PR as well. And that is to focus on talking about themselves and what they do, as opposed to the challenges that their prospects face that they can help them with. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. And I always say point of pains. What's the point of pain here?
Right?
Right? What is that? What are we really talking about? Who can we reach in and really motivate and move? And that's one of the biggest challenges I face with somebody using AI who's not experienced in the domain. That's why a lot of times it really doesn't speak to the audience. It's
Right.
just happened internally at my own firm, right? As we roll out GEO, somebody wrote a promotion, and I'm like, it doesn't really speak to it. And I kept driving, and here's what speaks to it. Why isn't my company being found in AI search?
Right.
Boom. I mean, that's going to be your number one
Sure.
ask.
Sure.
I had a demo of an AI product that finds the citations. I looked at all the prompts, and not one of the prompts that the demo company was presenting had anything to do with the real point of pain of this industry or company. And I'm thinking, why would they do that? Why would you show me all these nuanced prompts that don't really have to do um, with what the company sells, right? And they're talking about the long tail, and maybe this would be for the accessibility market, or maybe this would be for the. And I'm like, how about what's the cheapest flight from Boston to Philly? I think that is the real prompt. So
Right.
why aren't you giving me that? Is it not really doing a good job with that? So, yeah, I think we spent a lot of time hyping ourselves and not really talking about our clients or our employees. I mean, one of the ways I got acceptance in behavioral change and change management here at Gregory SCA is I never talk about productivity of AI. I always talk in this term, and I'm fortunate. I've been in this a long time. This is kind of my second career, is to get people trained up on AI. And that is, more than anything, I want you to be a viable professional in the future, no matter where you go. And you're only going to do that by mastering AI. And I can assure you, when I'm done with you and my training and my process and my working with you, you're going to be much more valuable. And 10 years from now, you're going to call me and say, you weren't crazy, right? I'm at the top of my game.
Wow.
And so by talking about them, I do so much better with sales than talking about me.
Is it helping you recruit people?
It definitely, retention of employees is up something like 34%. And that's one of the things you don't see with AI, Ed, is that, yeah, you have productivity gains. And I can talk about those. Our productivity is up 13.3% over last year at this time, right? You're doing more. Our client retention is up because we're providing more solutions more quickly, okay, in a quality way with people who understand how the technology works. But our employee retention is up 34%. Why? First of all, when you provide people with something they can't get anywhere else, they're going to stick with you longer, right? And this kind of training, I just don't think we held 104 training sessions in our first year of AI enablement. Wow. I don't think that's available. Secondly, the most demoralizing thing in the world is constant comeback from the client, red lines, as we call it in our business, right? And I've been at this a long time, Ed, and I'll be truthful with you. It still hits me when a client sends back something that's totally redlined. I start to question at night, wasn't I listening closely enough? Don't I understand their business? Am I off my game? Am I too old to be relevant, right? And if you can eliminate some of that for your staff, they feel better about themselves. They contribute more. They find a seat at the table more. It's that 27-year-old super creator who the CEO goes, hey, this company just announced an AI enhancement. What's this really mean? And that 27-year-old engineer comes in and says, oh, man, now they're using LLMs to question the CAD so that they can you don't have to program it anymore, or whatever it is they're doing, right? And the CEO goes, oh, thanks. That's a seat at the table. That's where those people who have curious minds, who want to advance their careers, will be at the top in 5 to 10 years. And if they don't master AI, in my game, Ed, there's not going to be room for them.
Right.
And it's a cruel statement to make, but that's the nature of the beast. The world has changed dramatically, more than I've ever seen it with AI and human communications. And we should rejoice in that it's overcoming a lot of the friction that we face with our client relations and meeting expectations. But at the same time, it's making us more competent and being able to do higher quality work at more velocity. Now, for an employer, that's good news. But for an employee, that's good news too, because you're going to be viable well into the future, and you're not going to lose your job.
So you just rattled off a bunch of numbers about your firm. Obviously, you know your firm inside and out. And growing to one of the top 40 is certainly an impressive accomplishment. I'm guessing somewhere along the way, you've made a decision that you worried might not work out. But now in retrospect was crucial to the growth. Where have you had that kind of a transition moment where the pucker factor was high and now you're thrilled you did it?
Well, at one point, I took a capital infusion from a family office, which was a big risk, which paid off wonderfully. They're wonderful partners. Copley Equity Capital Partners has helped us grow on many levels. So that was a big risk that we did it right before the pandemic in December of 2019.
Wow.
And then March of 2020, the pandemic hits. You think, oh my God, it's like I made all these promises to these people. How are we going to
Right.
survive this? But in fact, they were great partners that helped me plan through that in transition. I think the ability to always change is the most important factor in business, and to listen closely to the clients. I'm always reminded of a story that I saw on The Prophet, Marcus Lemonis. I don't know if you remember that show on CNBC.
Mm-hmm.
And he's transforming a pet supply store. And it's kind of a high-end supply store. It's very well run. The owners are great people. And he gets to the dog food section, and he's talking to customers. They have just the best dog food in the world, right? And so he asks them, he goes, look, you're buying a lot of stuff. I see you're not buying the dog food. And they go, yeah. He goes, it's really high quality. You know, what's your perspective? And they say, yeah, it's really good. It's organic and it's real meat. And they go, but it's really expensive. Okay. And so the next customer, you go through the whole thing and goes, yeah, it's just a little bit out of my price range. Right. So he goes back to the owner and he says, what's up with the dog food? Right. And he goes, well, you know, we would only want to have premium brands, the best of the best. And he said, there's no premium brands that people can afford. And they go, well, you know, we don't want to change our marketing model. He goes, let's get another brand of dog food in. And I always think of that as they were so fixated, okay, on one thing that
Right.
they never listened to the customers. It's almost like the old Saturday Night Live skit. There was Scotch Boutique. All the guy sold was Scotch tape, and he just didn't listen. People would come in and ask for duct tape. People would come in and they'd ask for electrical tape. Nope, just Scotch tape.
Right.
So if you're inflexible and you're not open to change, you're going to face an indefinite future. That's for sure.
We originally connected when I chatted with a couple of your folks at a middle market M&A event. Private equity has been getting some bad press recently. And certainly there are some predatory firms that don't necessarily have the community and the company and the employees' best interests at heart when they make an acquisition. But there's bad apples in every industry. And in my experience, I do a lot of work with sponsors and portfolio companies, and I find a lot of good people that offer a hugely beneficial service for family-owned manufacturing firms. How does, from a PR perspective, how does private equity need to tell their story better?
That's a great point. And I often think about that. And I think they would do themselves a large service if they were to show people the brands they've built that you love. You know, I remember when who was it? It wasn't John Kerry. The politician ran for president. His name escapes me. Who was with Bain Capital, right?
Mitt
Got
Romney.
torn up. And I'm thinking, all he has to do is say, look, do you buy Starbucks? you love Starbucks or whoever it is,
Right.
the brands they built and change the conversation and have those brands stand up for their sponsors. I mean, I will take a call from anyone and tell them about how Copley's contributed to our growth. And money's one thing, but the value add, doing business plans on the fly,
Right.
helping us find acquisition partners, giving us a view of others in the portfolio and where they stand in the economy and what's happening, that's invaluable. So I think they do themselves a real service by not really leveraging those brands. I think people would be shocked, and they don't want to do it because they don't want to know, they don't want anyone to know that the economy is driven by PE, and a lot of these brands are PE backed. They want everyone to have a certain branding. But my opinion is it's an important place for capital. It's an important source. They ought to protect that instead of running scared from it and let the brands tell the story.
And I think there's a set of case studies to build for, let's say, $100 million family owned manufacturer that was just running out of steam. I mean, the world's changing around them, and they didn't internally, despite all of the best intention and legacy and loyal employees and all of that, they weren't quite keeping up. And so that meant it was jeopardizing all of those wonderful things, the legacy, the security of the jobs in the community, and the right investor can really unlock the potential and create security where it was starting to weaken. And I think that's a wonderful story. I just wish I heard more of them telling that.
I agree 100%. Great point.
So you talk about readiness to change. You've talked a lot about AI. What I haven't heard is how you originally recognized the potential. What triggered it for you? How did you push those dots close enough together before GPT even came out?
Well, 4 years ago, I was fortunate enough, my son and I, who were very close, he's an engineer, an MBA out of Carnegie Mellon, right? A bit of a quant, very technically sophisticated. He understood the business because he grew up around me. He's not in it, but he knew what it was about.
Right.
And he came to me and he said, Dad, you face an existential threat. Machines will soon be able to write, and you don't even know it's presented. It's being in the wings. And I, of course, said, you're crazy. I've spent 35 years crafting, creating my craft, honing it. And he said, I'm serious. And we sat down, Ed, and we wrote out every kind of content we create at Gregory FCA. And then they wrote out, what kind of information would you need to write this? What kind of information would you need? And we systematized it. We started with a database, tagging everything in the database. Right. We then, ChatGPT-2, we built a very rudimentary kind of a Jasper. It was a format, it was a prompt-driven system, and it made lots of errors. The first time we ran a news release, it said that Gregory FCA had a mascot that was a green frog. I have no idea where that came from. But, what good is a newborn baby is what we saw. And then when ChatGPT came out publicly in November of 2022, it just blew my mind. I'm like, this is it. He was right. And I became a disciple, and I studied everything I could get my hands on. I joke that everything I've learned about AI, I've learned on Twitter and LinkedIn, following thought leaders. Right. And reading their newsletters like you do, and trying to stay current, and just a curiosity. My first year, on a Sunday morning, I'd be out in front of my garden. I like the garden, sitting in a chair on my phone, playing with it, pushing it, seeing where it broke down, how far it could go, what the risks were, what the advantages were. And I just kept doing it all the time. I was obsessed. I was immersed. I was obsessed. I wanted to know, how far could I take this thing? And then I had to socialize that within my firm, which was not easy, right? Because everyone suspected I was just doing it to take their jobs. My editorial and content teams were like, are you doing this just to eliminate us? Right. So I had to learn how to sell it within the firm. I had to learn how to create a situation where people felt safe doing it. People felt commended doing it. I had to expand it beyond me. I had to create evangelists other than myself because I couldn't just move the clock, move the gauge myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the epiphany. And I do believe this is as important as any tech advancement I've ever seen, including the GUI interface, including the internet, including smartphones and social media. I think this is more important than any of those past innovations.
And what do you say to the people who say, okay, you're probably right, but M dash, not only, but also constructions, that want to pick at these things that, admittedly may reflect some diminution in the quality or the artistic element that you talked about originally, but are a distraction from the real question?
It's really a red herring. It's really for the ignorant to be living there. I mean, there are big questions about AI, but the M dash isn't one of them.
Fair. All right.
It's just not.
You have a lot of interesting guests on your podcast. What are some of the most startling examples of AI disruption that you've had predicted by guests on your show?
Well, certainly. For instance, I interviewed one individual, his PhD, and he was doing a review using AI to do news stories to find anomalies in the news. And I found that very interesting. So these would be, in financial reports, words or terms that never before appeared together,
Mm-hmm.
because opportunity, right, the alpha, is often found in new things, innovations. And he went through how he had done that and constructed the algorithms, because everyone says, "Oh, OpenAI is." Chat AI is predictive, and he showed how it can be non-predictive. Where are the things that can't predict? So I found that very, very interesting, right? And it goes on and on from there. I mean, I'd have to stop and think. That's a really good question. I think one of the things I always conclude many podcasts with is what surprised you most about when you first saw chat. And to a person, those PhDs have said something to the effect that it could create a perception of the world based on a single modality. They said they never thought that would be possible, that human beings to do that need sight, they need scent, they need hearing.
Right.
And yet originally, now it has multimodality, but originally that you could gain so much knowledge from words. And I've spoken with computational linguists, and they say that's something that really shocked them, and that there must be more information than we realize in language. And that really impacted me. And I do believe that is the case, that there's more information hidden in the mathematics, the syntax. I don't know where, and no one knows where it resides.
I wonder if it's the same across languages.
I don't know. I know this much, that I often do tests where I submit things in one language to oppositional groups who speak another language to see where the bias resides. And it seems to turn that up. So there's some evidence in my world that it's doing the exact same thing.
Interesting.
But I haven't done a real study on that. That's just, I often will think of a study and do it in 10 different attempts of a prompt. And that's one I've done. I submitted it in Palestinian Farsic, and I submitted it in Hebrew to the two different audiences. And it showed me where that language would offend the other group.
Really? Back to PR. We've talked about press releases. We've talked about content creation. What are some of the other basic functions for companies that haven't really embraced PR and say, listening to you, they're kind of curious? What other things should they be thinking about? I mean, I think putting their subject matter experts out there for speaking opportunities on podcasts, maybe even getting people comfortable with being on podcasts. I'm always amazed at folks who are so knowledgeable in the industry that get nervous when they get ready to talk on one. What other functions should PR be helping companies understand areas where they can help create value?
Well, certainly preparing people for those events and making them comfortable is a large part of what I do at my level. I think live events are going to have more impact in the future, because in a clickless zero-click world, right? And we had always said your website is your storefront, right? Well, if your storefront goes away, how are you going to build business,
Right.
right? And it's almost like you have a B2C business of some sort, like an HVAC business, and you don't have a storefront, right? You've got to go out and meet people. You've got to network. You got to meet builders. You got to meet architects. I think it's going to become back in vogue that conferences do very well, the conventions are well attended, and that personal bit to overcome the fact that SEO may go away. I mean, I wrote a blog post probably 2 years ago about the death of Google search, and it got picked apart pretty well by people. But I just thought as AI engines became more and more important, I didn't see exactly how it would work. I didn't realize that Google would soon have the AI overview up top, but I
Right.
did think people would be on AI more than they'd be on Google, and that has come to pass. So
There's an Upton
um,
Sinclair quote that says, and I'm going to screw it up, but essentially, it's hard to convince a person of something when their salary depends on them not believing it. And I think about that more and more when I watch the SEO agencies and the content agencies. And you talked about people in your agency initially resisting the idea because they thought it was just going to cannibalize their jobs. There's so many people that haven't shifted. They're subject to what I read the other day. Somebody put it in a good way, ontological shock. It's just not a paradigm through which they look at the world, and they're going to get blindsided.
yeah, absolutely. Good point. Great quote.
You talked earlier about the value of research, and you put it in the context of creating content that works for LLMs, but it's also, in my experience, a great PR tool. I mean, if you can create proprietary research as a company through qualitative interviews with prospects, another good prospecting approach in some cases, because you've got particular data maybe that you collect through the work that you do. I work with a lot of machine builders. They get machines collecting data, so they've got anonymized baseline kind of benchmarking data. If you can create research based on that and then publicize it and share it, that lets other people benchmark where they are. I've seen that work very effectively for PR. Is that something that's commonly done?
That's pure gold. And the problem is, well, my experience is a couple things. First of all, not enough companies see that value, so they don't do it, right? It has to be through a legitimate third party. Second of all, they don't think of it as news, they think of it as marketing, right? So if the conclusion is buy more of my widget, the media is not interested in it,
Right.
right? If the conclusion is that you can see, there can be a 15% productivity gain by the application of XYZ, and this is how it's done, and here's what the audience says needs to be done to do more of that. That's a valuable study all of a sudden, right? But we work in cybersecurity, and we often have our clients that they do self-serving studies, which basically says buy our
Sure.
software,
Right.
and it's unmarketable,
Right.
and they spend this money and it comes back and there's just nothing you can do with it,
Right.
right? Going through it, I mean, I often start the process by asking the machine, let's go over XYZ, the topic. Let's really research it. What's not being answered in current surveys, right? And then to reverse it and then write the survey to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
What could be news? That's very powerful. And it works just not for PR, but it works for giving presentations at conferences.
Sure.
It works for delivering email marketing behind a paywall. It works for GEO because original studies, are a prime source of
Right.
authoritative citations.
Right.
So you can get 6, 7 bite of the apples with a carefully crafted, authentic study that presents real findings.
But going back to what you said about podcasts, I've also seen it work really well as a prospecting approach because they're flattered when they say, we think you've got good insights. I'd like to, I hate the expression pick your brain, but I'd like to have that conversation and get those insights, and we'll cite you in our research, and they're thrilled. And then you're building that relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What's the most important advice that you and your firm often give clients that gets the most often ignored?
You will create real value in your enterprise if you communicate well.
Internally or externally or both?
externally,
Okay.
primarily, because I don't do a lot of internal communications. Internal, very important. I don't mean to dismiss that, but my bias is externally communicating your story, and there's real value in that.
And what about staking out controversial positions? Do you encourage it or discourage it?
I would love more of my clients to be on the edge. They don't care to go there, right? And even, even myself, with the recent Gwyneth, I'm talking so
The
much.
the Coldplay concert thing?
Yeah, the Coldplay thing. Somebody on my own social media feeds of PR people, everyone ripped it. Why it wasn't done well. One PR guy who I'm good friends with said it was brilliant. And I said, not only was it brilliant, but I don't know if I would have had the courage to bring that idea to the client. Isn't that a tragedy?
Yeah.
Right. We self-edit ourselves so much sometimes that we don't get on the edge
Right.
because we know the client's not going to buy it. Right. But sometimes you get props and you get taken seriously by taking it to the nth degree. We don't do that enough. And I think this instance with Astronomer and Coldplay is a great example, right? They use that to explain what they do. I had never heard of Astronomer. I didn't know what they do.
Right.
Now I know who they are. I know what they do. I watched a damn commercial from their temporary spokesperson, Gwyneth Paltrow, and it was a revelation to me.
Right.
You're going to have to do more of that in the future to cut through the noise in a world where not only there's zero clicks, Ed, but the deluge of information
Sure.
that can come through AI now is clogging it. Email marketing does not work anymore. And if anybody can help me figure that out, let me know, because I'm just not seeing the results I used to.
All right. If we're putting leadership and subject matter experts out there, we want them on video, we want them speaking at conferences, we want them networking at events. How many faces can a company have? Should it just be one? Does it need to be the CEO? Can it be 5? How do they decide?
Oh, you have to prioritize. You have to figure out who can speak to what topics. First thing that we do in a planning session is determining who can speak to what and what should they be speaking about. So if it's the CFO, there's things they can speak to. And that could be beyond just the financials of the company. That can be, the economics of the industry and how it's changing. The CEO, big, broad positioning, big, broad visioning reserved for that. Subject matter experts, specific to the topics they want to talk about and how they want to talk to them. Who has credentials? I have a client that has a PhD employee who speaks about psychology. He's a no-brainer, right? He's a no-brainer because he has the cred. And we've trained him up. He does extremely well. So you got to figure out what the topics they can speak to, what's appropriate.
So you can have multiple people from the company out there in front.
Absolutely. And look, the Wall Street Journal does not want to talk to your head of biz dev.
Right.
No, don't want to do it.
So
right.
David Meerman Scott made a name for himself with his concept of newsjacking. In other words, there's a breaking story. Companies can jump on it. In the industrial space, maybe that's a tariff announcement. But there's also longer term trends in industrial, like reshoring and reindustrialization. How should companies manage the PR of a news trend over the longer arc? Should they be out there consistently adding angles, or should they pick one point that they focus on?
Well, it depends. It depends on what the breaking news is. If it's important to the company, you again will have many bites at the apple, right? We often call it the story after the story, right? So if something breaks, if there's a cyber hack, for instance, that's going to be, the news will be one day. But the story after the story would be, what happened then, right? How were customers made whole?
Right.
I got to take a drink.
I've kept you talking. You're a good sport.
So that could be a long fuse. I'm losing my voice. I apologize.
All right. Well, so take another drink, and let me ask you another question that's related to that. When we think about reindustrialization, a lot of the kinds of companies I work with do a lot of automation. And so some celebrate that as a positive trend, that there's going to be increased productivity, that it will create better safety and working environment for employees. Others see it as a negative, that they criticize it because it's going to cost them jobs. So should a company try to thread that needle and navigate it, or just accept that some haters are going to hate?
Again, I think it depends. And that's always, for instance, look, if you do a layoff, Wall Street loves it, employees hate it,
Right.
right? So you got to walk a very sensitive line. And that comes from understanding all your audiences so that you're not offending one to the benefit of the other. And sometimes you can't do that. You just have to be upfront about what you believe.
Right.
But in like automation, right? I think the counter story is we really don't know what jobs will be created in the future, but we sure as hell know what jobs are going to be eliminated. And all the pundits who are on the negatives, the skeptics, tend to only calibrate, only count those jobs they know will be eliminated.
Right.
So, yeah, automation is going to lose jobs, but if you're in Rockford, Illinois, right, you may not be on the line creating auto parts. You might be creating the software for the robots, or fixing the robots, or managing the plant for the robots, or working with GM on the next generation of what the robots will be able to create.
Right.
So we can't factor those in. So I would suggest that they always balance their negative story of automation against the jobs we don't know. I mean, I read this fact that every increase in the size of a diesel engine in the railroad resulted in more jobs, not less. Every generation of more power created more jobs. So yeah, the coal tenderer went,
Right.
but creating the engine created more jobs.
Outside of crisis response, should the board of directors have any influence on PR, or is it really just something for the executive team and the marketing team?
Oh, the board of directors should always be included in the conversation, particularly when it comes to visioning, messaging, audiences, how we're going to talk to investors, how we're going to talk to stakeholders, how we're going to talk to legislators, how we're going to talk to consumers, right? But the noise happens when there's a board of director constantly chirping once the strategy is set.
Right.
That's high risk, because that tends to take priority over the long-term plan that was put in place to see value. So it can be a detriment too.
Sure. Besides yours, what podcasts or YouTube channels do you suggest for people who want to kind of upskill themselves or learn more about how to maximize the opportunities with PR?
Well, with PR, I definitely would look to individuals like, let me think about that. I listened to, there's a gentleman I interviewed yesterday. His name is Tim Dillon. Very insightful about AI and how to implement it in PR, not just in an agency, but how companies should do that and what it means. I think that's a good one. I think PR News does a good job of creating different podcasts on different topics about PR, which I enjoy because it goes into depth. And if you're internal to a company, I think you'd want to know that. If you're on the AI side, I listen to Connor Jennerin. He's at the Stern School at New York University, and I've been following him from the beginning. Also, Ethan Mollick, who publishes on both Twitter and LinkedIn. Very insightful. A lot of his stuff is very doable, very understandable. He's a PhD, but he tends to do it more on the entrepreneurial side, which is very valuable for companies too, because they can see, they can apply that to how they want to move forward in what's becoming a more entrepreneurial world because of AI.
Interesting. Good resources. Thank you. How do folks follow you and connect to learn more from you?
Well, I'm all over LinkedIn. I do my podcast. If you Google my name, Greg Matusky, I'll come right up. And then it's gregoryfca.com. They can go right on there, and I answer all my emails.
And for industrial companies who they're listening, they're watching, you've really piqued their interest, they're wondering, geez, maybe there's something here that we've discounted inappropriately and we should dig into. I know in industrial manufacturing is not a key focus for your firm. Should they reach out to you, or is it
Oh
just
yeah, we've handled manufacturers. We handled, for instance, Shot Glass, which is the largest, second largest producer of precision glass in the world.
okay?
We handle all their North American PR, and all the rules of the game remain the same.
Got it. All right, wrap us up. 3 minutes on why PR is critical for an industrial company and why AI is making it even more important than before.
Well, I think the world has changed incredibly quickly, and there is going to be this crash of Google search, and your positioning on Google search is not going to be as important as it was in the past. You need to learn how to use AI to structure better content on your owned properties so it can be found and picked up. And I think most industrial partners have a lot of great information that answers specific questions that we put in to an AI engine about their product, their service, their engineering capabilities. So that's one thing, right? The secondly is that it's easier to create that content today than ever before. The volume and the trajectory has to increase to make an impact. That's available to you. I think personal relationships are going to be more important as more things are automated. And that means the CEO having a vibrant LinkedIn, subject matter experts having a vibrant LinkedIn. It means preparing for conferences and conferences in a way that you can be delivering real information to your audience, bringing them into your sphere of influence. I think that's going to be a high priority as we move forward with AI. And all those things are PR. PR is going to be, I often say, the cockroaches will inherit the earth when it comes to marketing, because SEO companies are going to be in trouble. Content development companies are going to be in trouble. But the ability to create awareness, visibility, and viability for a player, I think, relates to those people who can build awareness and build a reputation in many forms on many channels, too many to even mention.
Well, that's I think, a powerful way to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Greg, for spending time with us today.
It was a great interview, Ed. I appreciate the time, and best of luck. And you asked some tough questions.
And everyone, please like, share, comment. You know the drill. Subscribe. And thanks so much for listening and watching the Industrial Growth Institute podcast.